give yourself permission to do that work, I guess, because I think we live in a culture that's very much like you always have to be producing tangible outputs. And so taking time to like do inner work, I think sometimes is a little bit hard for us because there's not necessarily this tangible, like, oh, I sold this many things, I made this much money doing this work. It's like, it's just like quiet internal work that you have to set aside the time for. But it's so, so valuable.
Welcome back to Answer the Call podcast. Today, I'm joined by a fellow podcast host who also happens to be one of our business coaching clients. So I'd like to welcome Hannah to the show. When we first started coaching, Hannah was in the early stages of building her business, which involved a lot of juggling ideas, questioning abilities. I'm using her own words, questioning her abilities, and then trying to make wise decisions without much clarity in front of her. She described, again, in her own words, a silo of chaos, which I thought was a good way to describe it. So a lot of overwhelm, self-doubt, all those things that we are all too familiar with. But today she's running her business with a whole new level of confidence, clarity, and driven focus. It's been incredible to watch. I cannot wait for her to share the story of how this transformation unfolded. So hi, Hannah. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun to be on the other side of the podcasting experience.
Right. I know we were talking about how that's different, and I don't know, but I hope it just gets to be a fun chat. So tell the world, what is your business? Can you tell us some more about it?
Yeah, so my business is a platform brand. I'm never sure which word to use, but essentially resourcing adult ballet dancers. So I have done ballet for the last several years. I kind of got heavy into it during COVID, and in my own journey, just realized that there is a lot of very spread out information, and ballet can be kind of a hard thing to break into if you're not sure where to start. It's a community that has a lot of like etiquette surrounding it. It can be a very intimidating environment to break into. And so I just really wanted to be able to resource other adults who wanted to try ballet because it's been such a wonderful part of my life and just been such a great experience. And I have loved connecting with fellow adult dancers and just wanted to do more of that and just help kind of break down some of the barriers for people that want to start dancing as adults.
I think that is, I mean, you know that Kelsey and I have been like the biggest supporters of your business because we think it's so cool and such a good example of getting into a niche and just going all in. And I have described you as like your hobby best friend. When you want to get into a hobby and you need your best friend to mentor you through it, that's what your business is, at least a portion of it. And
Yeah.
I think that you do that so well. So let's go back to when you were in the early stages, and like I mentioned that you had said, you described it as a silo of chaos. Can you share what that felt like day to day as a business owner?
Yeah, so I had so many ideas when I kind of started doing this. I was already doing a podcast with one of my ballet teachers, and then I had additional ideas for things I wanted to do involving a website and social media and book club and all these different things. And I use the word silo because I had all these ideas in my own head, but I felt very alone in the process. And to be clear, I have an extremely supportive husband and family, but at the end of the day, this was like my thing, you know, that I wanted to do, and so it was kind of all on me. And I had so many ideas, but not a lot of structure. And I felt like I was just kind of chasing my own tail in the day to day of like, I want to do this thing. I feel like I'm kind of on an island, and I have all these ideas that I think are good ideas, but I'm also wrestling with a lot of self doubt. I don't have any structures in place. So, yes, a silo of chaos.
Yeah, I remember when we first met, um, I chased after you. Like, you need to do this program. We need to work together. But and I'm so glad that you did. So what limitations did you face because of this silo you felt like you were in, and then also the chaos?
I think the biggest thing for me was just feeling like the amount of work and energy that I was doing was not matching output.
Mm.
Like I would feel like I was spending a lot of time and energy and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, and then it just wasn't translating to feeling like I was really getting ahead or making any real progress in my business, specifically in the component of just being able to make money and start monetizing the things I was doing. I was spending a lot of time and energy doing things, but didn't have a clear plan for how to turn this into something that could actually make some money so that I could continue to do it. Cause, I mean, as much as it's wonderful to do things you love, at the end of the day, you can only do the things you love if it's also helping to pay your bills. So that part was difficult. And I think I just, yeah, I was just very limited in feeling like I was getting ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with the kind of the internal doubts of can I make money doing this? Is it worth my time? What were some other internal doubts or fears that kept you stuck?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is and I think we talked about this in our first session, is just, is this the stupidest idea ever? And everyone in my life is just too kind to tell me because, like I said before, I have a very supportive husband, family, very positive, loving people. And I am so grateful for that. But the flip side of that was just honestly thinking, like, maybe this is really stupid and not going to work, but everyone in my life just loves me too much to tell me the hard truth.
Yeah.
Because, from what you said earlier and what I described, anyone who's listening, I'm sure you can tell this is a pretty niche thing, adult recreational ballet. So there was a lot of fear around, is there even enough of an interest in this type of thing? Can this be not just lucrative in the sense of financially, but meaningful and really have a contribution that matches the amount of work it is, because it is a lot of work to do the things that I'm doing and the things that I wanted to do. And so it's like you want the impact to match, the amount of work. And so I had a lot of doubt
Mhm.
over like, is this even a good idea? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's so relatable for business owners. I mean, anybody starting any project where it's so much work up front and you're not seeing that financial reward
Yeah.
quickly, typically. Um, and it's just the questions of, is this even worth it, come up. So we started your clarity process and started working through, okay, what does calling even look like? And kind of business aside, right? Just calling in general. What, as we started working through those pieces together, what became clear to you about your calling and then how that mixed into your business as well?
Yeah, I think I realized in that process that there was a really big disconnect between what actually kind of set my soul on fire, like the things that I
Mhm.
really would do and feel a lot of joy doing, versus things that I was just competent at and had become good at. And I think I have spent a lot of my adult life pigeonholing myself into the like administrative category, because that's typically what I have done, is like business operations, business administration. And that's something that I've done well at and seen
Mhm.
success in. And so I think in that, it can be hard when you do something well, because you can start to confuse that as like, oh well, that's the only thing I'm good at, that must be what, even like what God has for me, because that's the thing I'm good at doing. And I think in the process, I one of the things I found so valuable was doing the questionnaire that we sent out to people that are close to us
Yes.
and getting their feedback, because that to me was shocking. Honestly, I was so surprised by what people said about me versus what I thought about myself, and the difference in me thinking that I was kind of purely an administrative type of person, and then getting so much feedback about people really seeing a creative side in me. And I think again, like that's something that I haven't always felt like the creative part comes naturally. I've always really enjoyed it, but because it didn't necessarily come as naturally, I think I always pushed it out of my professional life when thinking about like what types of jobs I could do and things like that. But as I've leaned into that, through the process and gaining more clarity and like leaned into the creative side, I've realized that that type of work is really what fills my cup. And so that was such an interesting part of the process for me, was just realizing how wide the disparity was between what I thought about myself versus what other people see in me, and that actually much more aligned with the truth. Then I
Mhm.
think we can see ourselves through like a very distorted lens sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so well said. And you bring up so many interesting points about like what you feel, what you love to do, and what you're competent at. And the reason that the clarity, one of the many reasons that the clarity conversation is so hard and mixed up, right? There's just it's a big bag, right, of just a bunch of different elements. And for some people, the conversation is, okay, what are you really good at, and how does and are you also like doing that? Cool, go for it. But you had this interesting different situation where what you're really good at maybe was actually pulling you towards a direction where you were putting yourself in a box versus actually coming into who you are and letting that shine through. And I think breaking out of that box was so cool to watch and to see. And I think that helped your business really start to thrive because you brought this confidence to your business, which
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask, like, in your own words, how are you thinking about business differently now than you were before having that breakthrough?
Yeah, I think that process gave me so much more trust in myself, and not to sound like super woo woo or anything, but just like the kind of the like following your, I don't want to say follow your heart when that like directly contradicts biblical wisdom of like the
Yeah.
heart is deceitful above all things, but you know what I mean? Like I think that
Yeah.
I didn't always trust my ability to lean into things that were a little bit more creative, or were a little less like hard skill type of things. And I think in this process, and in allowing myself to lean into just different creative aspects of the things I'm doing, I feel like my whole internal life has just like blossomed in a different way, which has been really cool as an adult, because I'm 37. And so, I think sometimes like you hit this point in adulthood where you're like, I should really have these things figured out by now, and I should really know, what makes me happy and what I'm good at, and fill in the blank. But I think now I'm just really starting to hit a different level of self-awareness, and just even like who God has created me to be, versus, like I was saying earlier, just the things that I have felt competent in. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah.
hopefully.
In some way. Yeah, it's so interesting, the like follow your heart, and then as Christians we want to downplay that, or not even downplay it, but there's this messaging of don't do that, right? There's scripture
Yeah.
around don't do that. But also it can, God gave you your heart and your desire. So there's something to listen to there. Doesn't mean you act on that without any wisdom or logic around it, but listen.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
And
think that's the beautiful part about the program, is like there is that wisdom of being in community, because I think so much
yeah.
of my struggle has been just like self trust, even as we've kind of gone through the process. And having you guys, and then the people in the group calls that are also going through similar process, like it's so amazing to have that community support and feel like you are getting the external wisdom of, like, I knew that you and Kelsey wouldn't lie to me if I was like about to go off the rails on a really stupid idea. And
Correct.
that's really valuable as an entrepreneur. It feels weird calling myself that, but when you're starting something, it's hard. You're always kind of second guessing. You don't know. You're like, oh, is this the right thing? And so just having some people around you to help guide you and give you wisdom and give you a different perspective, because I think that's the other hard part about doing something on your own, starting your own business, is like you only have your own perspective. And so, there's been so many times in our coaching sessions or the group calls where you guys or someone else has said something that's like a completely different way of thinking about, how to handle a scenario. And so I think that is just so valuable, like that. And I think you're right. That's exactly where it's like, yes, there is that internal component of wanting to follow our hearts and, do the things that God has placed in us with the wisdom of community, accountability, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about that when you said earlier, you felt like you were in a silo because is everyone in my life just telling me what I want to hear and no one's being honest? That is a great time to bring a coach on board because there are plenty of times where I need to tell people that's not a good idea. No, we're not going to do that because of X, Y, and Z. Actually, and you know, it's kind of refreshing for me because I get to just be totally honest. But then in my community, there's a little bit more, it's cushioned a little bit more, right? Because you do want to be supportive and people don't always want to coach, but honesty is a great policy. Now you can look back and realize, oh yeah, my community was being honest with me. I did have good
Yeah.
ideas. It is coming together. But something else that we really experienced in community with you was specific answered prayers. This was so cool. I feel like you had the most specific answered prayers of this season that we've seen. So can you talk about that a little bit more and how having those answered prayers or just learning to pray differently has helped you or impacted your reliance on God in business?
Yeah, that was such a wild part of the last six
Yeah.
months. And it was really cool because it was actually something Kelsey had said at one of the very first prayer meetings that I was in. Was just about like being really specific. And I'm going to ask for like exactly the thing versus just doing the general, please bless my work prayer. Because I think sometimes, at least for me, that can come from a place of not wanting to ask for specific things because you want to leave room for honoring God's will, whatever that is. But I think praying really specifically, the really cool thing about that for me was that like when you ask for something really specific, then when God does it, it's the awe and wonder and like the blessing of it feels so much more even amplified when you're like, I asked for this really specific thing, and God, who is God of the universe and has an infinite number of things that he is managing on a day-to-day basis,
Mhm.
like heard that specific prayer and answered it. And even if the answer is a no, it's like there's something about praying really specifically that I think is so powerful, and it just was not something I had been doing. But I think one of the other things it did too is just really expand my belief that God does really care about the details of my business, and that that is a mechanism that he uses to like really deeply bless me. You know, like when I pray through the details and I give the details to him, that's something that then he uses, you know, to just expand and grow my faith. And it's been really fun to almost like invite him in on a deeper level than I had been previously.
Mm-hmm. I also think what you just said sparked this in me of examining all the details, like going into all of the corners of your business, which is so intimately interwoven into your life. So it's not just business, it's also who Hannah is and
Mm-hmm.
your heart and your mind and everything that has to do with you. So you're going into all these corners and you're actually able to bring your concerns and fears and worries and anxieties and wants and desires. You're actually able to bring that to God and voice it. I think so often in prayer, do I say we get lazy? There's a component of it that's laziness and then a component of it that's just not knowing, right? We're not
Yeah.
exposed to the kind of specific prayers that we're talking about. And so we just kind of like jump from topic to topic. Oh God, bless this, do this, great, awesome, cool, see ya, good night. Versus actually getting into the weeds of, oh God, I really want this to happen because that will allow me to do this, which will bless my business, which will allow me to contribute in this way. It is so character refining
Yeah.
and really cool in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's allowed me to lay things down in a different way too. Like um I think this is something that one of you said in one of our coaching calls, but just the idea of we plant the seeds, but God is the one who ultimately makes things grow. Like we are called to work and to labor and to be faithful in that, but ultimately at the end of the day, like I can't make anything happen once I've done my best. And I think in praying for if it's just a general prayer or praying for a certain outcome, like there is a surrendering of the thing that I think has also really helped me as a business owner with some of the emotional highs and lows of business, and reaching out to people about things like podcast sponsorships and then getting rejected. And there's just a lot of highs and lows when you're navigating starting a business. And in praying really specifically, it's like you get to release things in a different way and trust that it's God who is in control of the outcome. And I think, to your point, like it's when it's more specific, the release and the surrender and like the weight that comes off me, I've noticed is very different than just praying general prayers, because it's like I'm giving God this specific thing, not just like God bless my business. And in doing that, I'm like, you know what? The outcome is in your hands. Like I was faithful, I did the thing, and like now it's up to you. And like one of my mantras, I don't know if that's like a new agey way to say it, but one of my like mantras lately has just been like, what God has for me, man can't take from me. So like if God has something for me, then I don't need to worry about the outcome. Like if I'm meant to, get a certain sponsorship or have something happen, like if that's what God has for me, then nothing can stand in the way of that. So like if it doesn't work out, then it's because God didn't have it for me. And again, that just kind of takes out some of the emotional ups and downs that I think is a really big part of being a business owner. I don't know if that's more amplified as a female. I know we've had that conversation in
Yes,
group calls, but yeah.
absolutely. Go back and listen to an episode from June 2025. Your motivation changes, and that's okay. Something like that.
Yeah.
Because you're so right. I do see a lot more of who we are as women tied up in business and jobs. Um, and I also, as you were talking about like what has God has for me, men cannot take away, it reminded me of I wrote in a margin of my Bible. I forget what verse it's next to, so I'm just gonna give you the little mantra. But I just wrote, if God has brought you to a season, you will not labor in vain. And
Love that.
yeah, I see that in your business. Like this is so clearly blessed so far by God. He has brought you here. He's kind of brought all this together to work out. So any labor that goes into that won't be laboring in vain. Of course, that comes
Yeah.
with constant reflection and making sure you're aligned and all those things, which
Yeah.
you do so great. But when we talk about these specific prayers, I want to give some people some examples because maybe they've never been exposed to specific prayers before. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you remember any of the specific ones that we prayed? I think I have one that I remember, but you tell me if you remember any.
Yeah. I remember there was a week where I had sent out a few really important emails, and we prayed in the group call that there would be answers in those emails. And I can't remember, I think one of them was regarding a sponsorship, one of them was something else, but like we prayed specifically for those emails that got sent out. And then I think by our next prayer call, it was like God had already done stuff. And then, sponsorship has been a big one. Just prayers for like, I also do a book club with fellow adult dancers, and just prayers for like opportunities to connect, more deeply with the women in that group. And those prayers have just been answered in really amazing ways. Like even just prayers for, affirmation of like what I'm doing, of being on the right track. And then, is this really a meaningful thing? Just like praying that, just being like, Lord, I feel like I just need you to show me that this is the right thing. And then boom, that week I'd get 3 messages from random people being like, the podcast was so helpful for me. I just started ballet and I didn't know, so it's just amazing to see um, just like very, very specific prayers answered. So those are a few that I can think of. I don't know if you have more that I forgot.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of the emails one with the
Yeah.
sponsorships. And I even think there was one where it was like, okay, Lord, if this is not the right thing to do, please make that so clear on this call. And you said you got on the call and you realized, wow, I am not partnering with this person.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that one too. Yeah, it's just that was like such a huge lesson for me in the prayer call. Like I'm so glad that you guys model that in the group prayer time, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who maybe hasn't been shown that way of thinking and praying through their business. And it's just like such an incredible way to shift your mindset about prayer and about like inviting God into your work in a really deep way.
Mm-hmm. Full reliance and dependence. I actually just had a conversation with somebody about that yesterday where, oh man, I don't want a job that doesn't require me to depend on God, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Lord truly knows that having your own business means you
Yeah.
got to rely a lot on God.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
very different from previous situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the tangible changes you've made or plan to implement soon in your business?
Yeah, one of the big ones, I remember the first couple months after kind of getting through the clarity stage. You'll probably remember that this one came up a lot in group coaching. I was just like, simplify, simplify, simplify. I just knew that I needed to take some things off of my plate that were good things, but weren't the most impactful thing that I could be doing. And I was really hesitant to do that because I was like, oh, I love these ideas. I want to do these ideas. But I think I learned in that sometimes saying no is what frees you up for the bigger yes, you know? And so I think in releasing some things I had on my plate, it was hard to do, but it ultimately was the bigger win for moving my business forward. So that was one big change at the beginning. And then systems, you know, just developing systems has been something that has been started and something I need to really continue working on. But yeah, overall, I think like the biggest changes have been in my own mindset, and just yeah, I think the waves of emotion have gone from being like really big to now they're a little less so, which is great because you know I think that is just like a huge reality of starting something because you care about it deeply. Like you're not going to start something unless you really care, you know, or at least I wouldn't think you would. So I care more about this than I have, you know, a lot of things I've done in the past. So those emotional waves were really hard to ride. So I think the biggest change has been just in my own emotional stability.
Totally.
In addition to systems and simplifying and the more practical stuff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think an important lesson there is accepting or understanding that with starting business comes high highs and low lows, big emotional waves, but also understanding that it's hopefully a temporary pain, having those big emotional waves, and it does start to soothe out, which is what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And that comes through work, God's grace, and a lot of time, or maybe
Yeah.
some time. So, what would you, when you were on those big emotional waves, what were some things that helped you when you were maybe in the low lows? Like, is any of this gonna ever work? And I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think, and maybe it's just my personality when I am at a low point, it's like everything feels so hard and like so much work. And I think I would lose the joy in the overall big picture of what I was getting to do when I was on a low. And one of the things you said to me in one of our one on ones was about just shifting the perspective from like, I have to do this to I get to do this. And it sounds silly, like it's like, well, I started the business, so like of course I should just feel so lucky to be doing it every day, but that's just not the reality of doing
Mhm.
something. Like there's always hard things. It's like I still have to do obnoxious things like related to taxes and bookkeeping and things like that. No matter how much you love what you're doing, there's always going to be those things. And I think that mindset shift has just stuck with me so much of just like constantly shifting my focus back to I get to do this and like having gratitude for even getting to do something that is so centered on something I love. And that has really helped me to kind of bounce out of the lows faster because I can reframe those low points as like, yeah, but I'm getting to do this thing that I absolutely love. And like, yeah, this might be a really, really bad day. Like I had a day a couple months ago where I was just like sobbing because I had messed up something related to like sales tax, and I was just like, this is the worst. I mean, I literally on that day was like, I am closing the business because of this thing that happened.
Yeah.
But then I
Been
had
there.
to yeah, and I was like, you know what? But big picture, like I get to do this really cool thing that I love and believe in. And so shifting back to that helps me pull out of that mindset, because it's really hard when you're in the lows. But I think reframing with gratitude and focusing on the bigger picture has been so helpful. So thank you for that, because that's like something that's always stuck with me of like
Oh my gosh.
get to versus have to versus get to.
That's so good to hear because that you said it in the beginning there. It feels so simple, right? But it really can be a life changing, I guess to use the word mantra again.
Yeah.
I guess sticking with that. Where it all becomes super overwhelming and becomes a lot. And you and I are same in that we hate making mistakes, and it makes us want to crumble down into a speck of dust. Not to speak for you, but I know that we're similar in that. So sometimes it's all just too much, like truly. And what you can still do in that moment when you feel like you have nothing left, even if that's not your reality. Obviously, there's still a business, there's still consumers, whatever it is. When you feel like you have nothing, that's a very real feeling. And you can choose gratitude, and you can choose to look to the light, and you can choose to cry out to God in that. And wow, what happens from there is all the Lord's grace and His miraculous working. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so valuable. And we can't say it enough, right? Like in this world, we can't say gratitude enough. So I think that that's a beautiful testimony of how it's very practically worked in your career and your business. So as you are on, I guess, this side of the program, I'll say it's an ever evolving journey, right? But you're looking back on kind of where you were maybe 6 months ago. What would you say to somebody who is maybe in a similar place of overwhelm or feeling unsure or held back by fear?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing was getting that clarity on what you actually truly feel passionate about versus what you just are good at, because I think there can be a lot of fear that resides in that space of like, I want to do the thing, but like I don't know if I like, because I'm only this type of person, and so this is the box that I've been in, and so jumping into something new, like for me, I was always the person that was adjacent to the person in charge. And so being the person, in charge of my little one woman show there's been like a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of fear around that. And so I think getting that clarity on like, what do you actually really feel like are the deep things that like God has placed in your heart, in spite of all the preconceived ideas you can have about like what you're good at or what you've always done, is such an important first step that I think like unlocks everything else. Like I think for me that really was like the unlocking point of being able to have the confidence to then build something that is based on utilizing what I think are like my true gifts, talents, passions, like whatever you want to call them. But I think like it's so important to really do the work and take the time to get that clarity. Cause I mean, I was even, you might remember this from like our first session, like there was part of me that was even struggling with taking that time to like do the internal reflection, because I'm like, I need to do things, I need to get stuff done. And it's like that, it's hard sometimes to like take that time to really sit with your own fears and like process your wants and your all the things. But I think that that's like such a key component. So for anyone who is in that place where they feel like they're at a crossroads of what do I do next? Like, do I want to career pivot or do I want to start my own business? I think like the best gift you can give yourself that will really, really serve you for the rest of your life, because I really do feel, I mean, at the risk of sounding like totally cheesy, like I'll just say it, but like I do feel like this program like really changed my whole life because I see myself so differently. And so I think giving yourself that gift of like being able to see your own gifts and talents in a different way will change your whole life. So like give yourself permission to do that work, I guess, because I think we live in a culture that's very much like you always have to be producing tangible outputs. And so taking time to like do inner work, I think sometimes is a little bit hard for us because there's not necessarily this tangible, like, oh, I sold this many things, I made this much money doing this work. It's like, it's just like quiet internal work that you have to set aside the time for, but it's so, so valuable. So I don't know. I think that's like my biggest takeaway and the advice I would give to anyone else who's at that crossroads point of like, give yourself permission to do that.
You're going to make my heart burst into a million pieces. That was so well said. And I've seen that transformation in you as well. And I have, I'm going to play out an idea externally here, right? And sometimes I do this on podcasts and then halfway through the thought, I'm like, what am I saying? But let's go for it. So many people think that, myself included, right? A career change is you're walking down a path and then all of a sudden you turn on a different path and you just keep going. And I'm going to do an analogy to falling in love here, okay? Because that's what I used to think that falling in love was walking down a path, you take a turn and then everything's different. And you're just looking for that turn. You're looking to fall in love. You're looking for the career path. You can liken this to finding Jesus as well. You look for that turn to take, when in reality, I think that these big life changes and these internal transformations are more like standing in a dark room and you're just turning on more lights and more of the world around you is being illuminated through that. And in order to do that, you need to kind of stop and be still for a second and allow those lights to be turned on. And so many people are in that frantic searching phase of where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where let's just stop. And not stop as in don't take any action, but let's stand still for a second and look around and figure out what lights we need to illuminate around us to be able to see more clearly and to be able to move forward with more intention. And I think you depicted that really well in how you felt transformation throughout this process. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for being here. You know that I could talk to you all day long, but we will keep this shorter for the listeners. Can you please, Hannah, plug website, Instagram, podcasts, whatever?
Okay. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you happen to be interested in ballet, please find me on Instagram. My handle is the busy bunhead, and that's kind of my handle for everything because that's the name of my business. So website is thebusybunhead.com, Instagram is the busy bunhead, and then my podcast is called After Class, the adult ballet podcast. So that has been going for about a year and a half now. It's a weekly podcast. So if you enjoy ballet, if you're thinking about trying to do ballet, but you've been a little bit scared or intimidated to jump into it, that is why it exists, is to hopefully help shed some light on the world that is ballet. So yeah, and if you ever just want to ask questions or anything, I'm always available in DMs, email, all the things. I love talking to people about ballet or just life in general. So
can confirm she loves to get those DMs. And if I had to venture a guess, I would say that we probably attract more of an adult ballet community than some might think, because how we got connected in the first place was through, I believe, Kelsey's twin sister, Kirsten.
Yes. Yep.
Who is a professional mindset coach for professional ballet dancers. So if ballet has ever been on your mind, or if you're looking to pick up a new hobby, looking for a new workout, all of the things, definitely head over to Hannah's Busy Bunhead website, Instagram, all of it. The podcast I know is great as well. And sign up for her newsletter because it's so cute and cozy. Also, can I just say, never have I ever done ballet. I respectfully will never participate. Not my forte. but boy, do I love that newsletter.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
so good.
Newsletter's so fun. I love it. I
Yeah.
love doing it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. You can definitely see how much care and thought you put into your entire business. And um, it's just growing, y'all. And I know she's about to have her 2026 planning day, and there's going to be some good stuff coming to y'all in the new year. So I hope that you'll head over and check it out. Thank you so much for being here, Hannah. It's been such a pleasure, and can't wait to see where it all goes.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.